Chapter 3. Osifo's first place of call when he got to Ibadan was his friend Wale's. Somehow during the last 2 years their correspondence had petered out. He was told Wale was a second-year economics student at the University of Ibadan and was residing on the campus. He felt remorse at his own interrupted educational career. Would Wale want to see him now? He needn't have worried. Wale was as glad to see him as ever. "Hello, Osifo," he exclaimed on entering the students' common room of his hall. "This is a great surprise." Osifo jumped to his feet, and they embraced. "Hello, Wale," he said, slapping his friend on the back. "Here, let me look at you. How slim and tall you've become." "Oh, not as tall as you are. You must be at least 6 feet tall now, and you're looking very well and handsome too. Come, let's go up to my room. You must tell me all you've been doing." In Wale's room, the boys talked non-stop for almost an hour, mostly about old classmates. Osifo narrated all that had happened to him since they had last communicated, and Wale was sorry to hear that his friend still had no settled plans for the future. He was eager to help him but did not know what advice he could give. He thought hard for some minutes. "Look, Osifo, wait here. I'm going to get a friend of mine who's given me some very useful advice in the past. He's much older than me, although we are both in the same class. He's seen a lot of life, and he likes organizing people. His name is Daipo Mwanga. Don't be put off by his appearance. He looks like a prize fighter, and he clowns most of the time, but deep down, he has a serious disposition and a responsible attitude towards life and is quite kind. He said he used to be a bodyguard to one of our leading politicians." "Really? He sounds interesting. I would very much like to meet him." Wale soon came back with the man. Daipo really looked like a thug. He was short, thick-set, and heavily bearded. He had on a black shirt over a pair of white trousers, a black beret, wore one earring and a pair of very dark glasses. His left hand was covered with evil-looking rings. "Osifo, this is Daipo, a very good friend of mine." "Hiya, Osifo," said Daipo, stretching out his hand. "Here, shake paws. I like your face. Now what can I do to help you?" "I'm a very busy man. I'm athlete and I have the whole world on my shoulders, but I can still spare some minutes." "Please, Daipo," begged Wale, laughing, "quit clowning for a minute and listen. There isn't much to tell. We just need advice." "All right, shoot." Briefly, he was told about Osifo's interrupted educational career. He adjusted his glasses and looked sternly over their rims at Osifo. "Dropped out. Dropped out of school," he repeated, moving his face close to Osifo's, who turned to Wale, helplessly embarrassed. "Now why did you do such a silly thing? Don't you know knowledge is beautiful and that he who willingly refuses to acquire it shall be cast into utter darkness where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth and dragons?" "Please be serious, Daipo," pleaded Wale once again. "Hush. I'm thinking. Don't interrupt. Clowning helps the brain to relax. Now I've got it. Your friend must obtain his O-levels. This will form his basic qualification, and from there he can do other things." "O-levels," exclaimed Osifo. "How? I've not been near any form of book for almost 5 years. I doubt if I can concentrate now. I'm too old for O-levels." "Too old? Well, that's your business. Laziness, if you ask me." "Wale, does your friend here want to be helped, or is he going to raise objections to sensible suggestions?" "Osifo, listen to what Daipo has to say." "I'm sorry." "Please carry on," said Osifo, ashamed of himself. "Apology accepted. Now, I know of a good evening school in Dugby which is run by a man from my village. I think his fees are high, but I was told he has good teachers and the percentage of passes each year is fair. How long do you think it will take me to pass 5 or 6 papers?" "That depends on how hard you work. It could take you all your life or just 1 year. However, this Shylock friend of mine also runs a hostel for young men just a stone's throw from his school, for which he charges 10 naira a month excluding meals. So, there you are. Some of your problems are solved. Great. Thank you very much, Daipo." If you give me your friend's address, I'll go and see him right away. As for money, put in Wale, I can only help with 30 naira. Perhaps later. Oh, no, no. I can't possibly accept. After all, you're a struggling student yourself. I've got something to get on with for the meantime. Thanks all the same. I was coming to the question of money. There's a lot of it around, but mostly in the wrong pockets. However, you could work for my friend. His pay is so poor that he's constantly short of workers. I'd be surprised if he has no vacancy at the hostel now. The last time I saw him, he was looking for a caretaker for the place. If the offer is still open, it might suit you. You'd have a room on the premises. You can refuse the offer if it doesn't suit you. Here, I give you a note for him. Thank you, Daipo. 1,000 thanks, Daipo, old fellow, added Wale. I knew we could rely on you. I'm glad to have been of help, but I must say that your friend needs a lot of pushing. He should be more daring at his age and get rid of his reluctance to take on a challenge. Don't ever mention his name to me again if he fails to make 5 or 6 papers within a year. I like success. Good day. That parting shot of Daipos was what kept Osifo at his studies during the next 12 months and later on. Combining the duties of a caretaker at the hostel with his studies was not at all easy, and, as usual when things were not going smoothly, he wanted to give up, but this time he persevered. After all, it was his life. If he wanted a good and secure future, he would have to work hard. He passed 5 out of the 8 papers he sat for, and he applied for a place to do electronics engineering at the Federal Polytechnic in Makurdi. Daipo wanted him to try for A-levels and, if successful, gain a direct entry into one of the universities, but he wasn't keen. What do you want to study at the Polytechnic then? Asked Daipo one day when he called to see him at the hostel. Horology. Horo, what? Asked the other, stupefied. Horology. Watch or clock making. I know what horology is. What I mean is, why would a man like you go messing about with watches and clocks? I thought it was a job for the effeminate. No, it isn't, laughed Osifo. It is a special art. Frankly, clocks have always fascinated me, and I was delighted when I heard that this course was being offered at Makurdi. Yes, but you can't make much money from it afterwards. Oh yes, you can. Lots. Don't think of watch repairs as carried out by the man who sets up his workshop by the roadside. Think of industries that manufacture safes, alarms, clocks, wristwatches, and a whole range of articles in that line. Yes, I understand. Apart from the money, which I'm not so crazy about, I want to do something I'll actually enjoy doing. It's a chance I don't want to miss. A profession that involves listening to things tick would send me up the wall. Still, it's your life. Good luck, pal. Thanks. On the successful completion of the course, which lasted 3 years, Wale and Daipo, who were now working in Lagos, tried to persuade Osifo to come and work there too. Lagos is where all the action is, Wale told him. He declined, saying he couldn't cope with the pace of life there. He had a soft spot for Ibadan, so he got a job with a Chinese electronics company there and lived in a 2-bedroom flat in Okodu. Although his pay wasn't high, he liked his position of assistant engineer in the company, and he tried as much as possible to establish a foothold in his profession. The indigenization decree demanded that there be a gradual transfer of technology to Nigerians, so various courses were organized by companies for their employees. After attending 2 such courses, he was promoted to the post of engineer. He was very pleased at the progress he had made. His parents were thrilled, and a big party was organized for him in Usuri. He was told to come with some of his friends, and he went down with Wale and Daipo. Wale felt a bit awkward, for he had never been to a village in Bendo State before, but Daipo was in his element. He had traveled all over Nigeria during his days as a party thug, and anywhere was home to him. He was the life and soul of the party, as he drank and ate whatever was placed before him and danced jigs with almost all the village damsels. People warmed to him, and he rose to make speeches several times in Pidgin English, Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. For months after the party, the villagers still talked about him, and Mr. Egie was constantly asked when Osifo was going to bring down his funny friend again. Osifo found life even more pleasant when he bought his car. He was able to drive to places that held special memories for him, where he used to live at Okofa, where he lost his school fees to a money doubler. One day I'll bring my children to this spot, he promised himself, and Madam Adoni's house. He drove past it several times trying to catch a glimpse of any of the old faces, but he did not stop and go into the house. What would I say to her? He thought. He had not seen her since he was thrown out almost 11 years before. Had she aged? Was she still living the same lifestyle? There was no one to ask. One day, he was at a housewarming party given by Mr. A, the financial director of the company, when in came Madam Adoni with a young man of about 22. Osifo almost passed out at this sudden apparition from his past. She walked past him and even looked at him but did not appear to recognize him. He looked at her closely. She had aged slightly and was a little bit slimmer, but she was as lovely as ever, and had dressed in her usual good taste. She walked with her habitual unhurried steps, flashing her lovely smile as she acknowledged greetings here and there. Her nervous escort hovered by her side. Mr. A and his wife hurried out to meet her and lead her to the section reserved for special guests. There was no doubt that she was still held in high esteem in the social circles of Ibadan. Osifo wondered what the pull really was. It must be the money. He looked at her and thought of their days together. A lump came into his throat. Later that night, when the floor was packed full with dancers, he plucked up enough courage to go and ask her for a dance. He half expected her to refuse, but she didn't. She looked at him and frowned when he bowed to her, but she got up all the same. He held her close as they danced, excitement coursing through him. After a while she stopped dancing, drew back from him, and took a good look at him. "I remember you now," she said, her eyes narrowing. "You're Osifo." "Yes, madam," he admitted, bowing to her, and attempting a smile. She said nothing more. She left him on the dance floor and walked away. He was perplexed. He tried to go after her but was delayed by other dancers who were wriggling away all around him. When he finally got to where she had sat, he found that she had collected her things and had left. He never saw her again. He had been working for his company for about 6 years when the outgoing general manager, Mr. Wang, called him into his office one day to ask him what his future plans were. He was surprised and he wondered what the other man had in his mind. Was he going to be fired? The company might not be the most generous one around, but he did enjoy working there and had no immediate long-term plans. What exactly do you mean by future plans, Mr. Wang? You might think I'm intruding, but I wanted to find out if you would be interested in setting up a business of your own in future. I can't sincerely say I've given it much thought. Well, as you know, I'm leaving this country soon to go back home to Hong Kong. Actually, I've resigned from this company. My 2 brothers and I are going to set up a business marketing products manufactured by big names in the electronics field, and we would like an outlet here in Nigeria. I thought you might like to set up your own business and be our agent. I'm thrilled at your suggestion, Mr. Wang, but I've no experience whatsoever in the setting up of a business. I'm aware of that. One has to start somewhere. The important thing was finding out if you would be interested in the project. I had a good look around both here in the office and elsewhere, and you were the most reliable person I could approach. I've had the opportunity of working closely with you, and I must say that I was impressed by your dedication to work and by your honesty. I'm highly flattered, Mr. Wang, said Osifo, wondering why his last request for a wage increase was turned down if the general manager had such a high opinion of him. Although, continued Mr. Wang, as if reading his eye thoughts, we're fully aware in this company that you're not as fully recompensed as you ought to be. However, that's another matter. Now, about this project. I imagine I'd need a huge amount of capital to set up a business like that. Of course. That's where the difficulty lies. I'm in no position to get a loan from a bank. Why? What I have in the bank is negligible and I've no property or anything of the sort that would act as surety for a loan. Don't worry about financial backing. I've thought about all that. Now, there's a Nigerian friend of mine who is willing to sponsor half the business and be a sleeping partner. He's a businessman from Gongola State and is reliable. For the other half, I help you secure a loan from a bank on fairly easy terms. This way, the business will belong to you and my friend. What is required of you is hard work and honest and efficient management. That's if you decide in favor of the project. The proposal is very attractive, Mr. Wang, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity you're giving me to set up on my own, but, if you don't mind, I'd like to think carefully about it before giving you my final word. Fair enough. Think about it, discuss it with friends or relations and let me know your decision. Shall we meet in 2 weeks' time? Would that do? Oh yes. Thanks once again, Mr. Wang. I'm glad you're pleased, Mr. Egie, but don't forget it works both ways and we are looking after our own interests too, that is, a good outlet for our products. So, you're also doing us a favor. It's kind of you to put it that way, Mr. Wang. Osifo was happy at the prospect of setting up his own business, yet he was scared of the responsibility. A lot of money would be involved. Could he handle it? What if he failed or went bankrupt? His father was more in favor of a steady salaried job. He felt Osifo was too young to set up a business of his own on such a large scale. It was too risky. Ifoni was all for it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, he reasoned. After giving it a lot of thought, Osifo decided it would be foolish to miss such an opportunity. It would be good to be his own boss. All it required was dedication and a lot of hard work. He would need some luck too. Having told Mr. Wang of his decision, a meeting involving all the people concerned was held in Yola, after which Osifo left for Lagos to discuss the proposals with Wale, who was now a career diplomat and was married with 3 children. Daipo Mwanga had disappeared suddenly 3 years before and no one had ever heard of him since. Rumor had it that he had probably been murdered by enemies from his days as a party thug. This was never confirmed, and he was never declared a missing person. Wale and Osifo missed him very much. When the contract for the business was drawn up, Wale advised Osifo to contact a lawyer who would go through it first before he finally signed it. Setting up a business, Osifo discovered, was a more complicated process than met the eye. There were so many things to do. His partner, Mr. Ahmed, the businessman from Gongola State, suggested they call in a management consultant who would advise them on what was required. This they did and the company, Egie Electronics Company Limited, was set up in Benin City. One of the things he learned during the 18 months it took for the company to be established was never to undermine the power of the junior clerk in any organization. The papers for the registration of the company were halfway through being processed when he was told, one morning when he called at the ministry, that his file was missing. 2 weeks later, it was still the same story. The file could not be found. Furious, he went to the head of the division, who was a friend of Wale's, to report the matter. The junior clerk responsible was called in, told off, and asked to look for it. Another 2 weeks went by, and the file had still not been found. The clerk was very sweet and polite about it all. He had searched everywhere but could not find it. Perhaps Mr. Egie should start all over again, fill in fresh application forms and... Oh no, cried Osifo at the suggestion. Start all over again. It had taken them 3 months to get that far. To get the application forms was a tug of war. The lady who gave them out was forever away from her desk, and no one else could perform the feat in her absence. To get someone to hand them over to on completion was another matter, and you had to chase your papers from one officer to the other, and when the clerk saw how dejected Osifo looked, he relented. Ogre. Yes. Why did you report me to my boss? Since you could not find my file and things seemed to drag on, I thought he might be able to help. But he could do nothing. Right. He couldn't come and search for it. If I said the file was missing, it was missing. Osifo kept silent. He didn't know what to say to that. And if I say it has been found, then it has been found. The clerk looked at him meaningfully. Osifo understood at last, and some naira changed hands. The missing file surfaced promptly, and everyone was satisfied. Egie Electronics was opened by a high official in the Bendo State Ministry of Commerce. Mr. Wang came from Hong Kong for the occasion and Osifo's parents, brother and sisters and their families were at the high table. Mr. Ahmed was there too. Wale was the master of ceremonies and his wife Yemesi, a caterer, organized the refreshments. Many important people attended. Later that night, while having drinks with Osifo at his flat nearby, Wale told him that what he needed more than anything else now was a wife by his side. "Oh no," cried Osifo. "A wife? Not yet, old man. I don't want to be tied down." "Tied down to what?" "To a woman and the responsibility that goes with being married. I'm not ready for all that yet." "Oh, come, Osifo, grow up. You're 30 or more now and cannot continue to play around forever. After a hard day, you'd like to come home to a loving wife, and later the kids will come along, and you'll feel very fulfilled." "Maybe you're right. I give it some serious thought." "Why? Aren't you and Betty going to get married? You seem quite fond of each other." "I'm fond of her all right, but I wouldn't like her for a wife. She'd too shallow. She'd good to be seen with at parties, but she can't give me the love and warmth I'd like from a wife. Besides, she's a lousy cook." "What about Iso?" "Oh, come again. She won't marry me even if I ask her. She adores money and I don't have any. She told me several times that I'm the poorest man she's ever dated. Why does she bother with you then?" "I don't know. Perhaps there's something about me that she likes." "What about Kate?" "She looked lovely tonight. She'd a fool. Anything beyond clothes and parties is Greek to her." "Look, Wale, let's not run down the list of my girlfriends," he laughed. "My parents gave up trying to get me to get married ages ago. I won't hesitate when I meet the lady who can tolerate me. It won't be easy for whoever marries me, though." "Why? You look harmless to me." "Yes, but you see, I cannot really fall in love. Something always seems to hold me back. It dates back to a relationship I had with a lady when I was only a teenager. The way she treated me still rankles. I can't let myself go." "Oh, don't worry. I was like that until I met Yemesi. Even after several years of marriage, we're still in love." "You're lucky." "Yes, we both are. She did great and she makes me feel great in every way. Have I told you we've been posted to Zimbabwe? We shall leave next month." "No." "Oh, I miss you so much." "We'll miss you too. You must come and see us." "I surely will."